Welcome to Week 6 presentation for Chapter 10, Planning for Contingencies. Our learning objectives are to discuss the need for contingency planning, describe major components of incident response, disaster recovery, business continuity, crisis management, business resumption. We also will discuss how organizations would prepare and execute a test of contingency plans, as well as how the organization manages investigations. Let's start with the introduction to contingency planning. An organization's ability to weather losses caused by an unexpected event depends on proper planning and execution, without which an unexpected event can cause severe damage to an organization's information resources and assets from which it may never recover. The main goal of contingency planning, or CP, is to restore normal modes of operation with minimal cost and disruption to normal business activities after an unexpected adverse event. CP consists of four major components: a business impact analysis, an incident response plan, a disaster recovery plan, and a business continuity plan. NIST CP methodology includes a contingency planning management team, which develops a CP document, which NIST recommends has the following steps: develop the CP policy statement, conduct the BIA, and identify preventative controls. It also has you create the contingency strategies, develop a contingency plan, ensure plan testing, training, and exercises, as well as ensure plan maintenance, being that it's a living document. The contingency planning policy components include an introductory statement given by the senior management, a statement of the scope or purpose of the CP operation, a call for periodic risk assessment and BIA by the CPMT, a description of the major components, and a call for and guidance in the selection of recovery options and business continuity strategies. It also has a requirement to test various plans on a regular basis, identify key regulations and standards, as well as key individuals responsible for CP operations, appeal for support from the individual members of organization, and additional administrative information required for the CP planning policy. Individuals and teams involved in CP include the Contingency Planning Management Team, which has a champion, a project manager, and team members. There's also an incident recovery team, disaster recovery team, and a business continuity plan team. The business impact analysis, BIA, is the first phase of the CP process. The BIA assumes that controls have been bypassed, they have failed, or have otherwise been proved ineffective, that the attack succeeded, and that the adversity that was being defended against has come to fruition. Here you see the components of contingency planning. The first phase I discussed, the BIA. This illustration shows you the major tasks in contingency planning. The BIA. It begins with the prioritized list of threats and vulnerabilities. This was identified in the risk management process we discussed a week or so ago. Remember that the BIA should consider the scope, the plan, balance, know the objective, and then follow up. Our NIST standard, SP 800 TAC 34 Rev 1, states that the CPMT will conduct the BIA in the three stages shown. Remember, in this first major BIA task, one useful tool in identifying and collecting information about business functions for the analysis is the BIA questionnaire itself. Recovery time objective and recovery point objective are two very close definitions. RTO is the maximum amount of time a resource can remain unavailable before it has an unacceptable impact, whereas for RPO, it is the point in time prior to the disruption or system outage to which the mission or business process data can be recovered after the outage. Maximum tolerable downtime. This is the total amount of time a system owner organization is willing to accept an outage or disruption, where the work recovery time is the amount of effort that is necessary to get the business function operational. Here's a figure showing RTO versus RPO. Now including RTO, RPO, MTD, and WRT. Note in cost balancing that the cost balance point is the point at which the cost to recover and the cost of disruption intersect. Normally, the task of information asset prioritization would be performed as part of the risk assessment function within the risk management process. The second task of the BIA is identify recovery requirements. For each process and information asset identified in the previous BIA stage, the organization should identify and describe the relevant resources needed to provide or support that process. Here you see a resource component table. Note the columns of mission, business, process, the required resource components, additional resource details, and description and estimated cost. The third and last phase in the BIA is identifying recovery priorities for system resources. This is simply prioritizing the resources associated with the process to give a better understanding of what must be recovered first and what are the most critical processes. Just as the Enterprise InfoSec policy defines the InfoSec roles and responsibilities for an entire enterprise, each of the CP documents is based on a specific policy that defines the related roles and responsibilities for that element of the overall CP environment within the organization. Incident response. Incident response planning, IRP, consists of the actions taken by senior management to develop and implement the IR policy, plan, and computer security incident response team. An adverse event is an event with a negative consequence, where an incident is an adverse event that could result in loss of information assets. An early task for the CPMT is to form a Computer Security Incident Response Team, CSIRT or CSIRT. It's an IR team composed of technical IT, managerial IT, and InfoSec personnel prepared to detect, react, and recover from an incident. The NIST incident response life cycle is shown here, starting with preparation, detection and analysis, containment and eradication, and then post-incident activity, which usually involves researching and reporting on why did the incident happen in the first place. Our NIST SP 861 Rev 2 Computer Security Incident Handling Guide identifies the following components for a typical IR policy, starting with the Statement of Management Commitment, and down to the reporting and contact forms. It's important to understand that incident response is a reactive measure, not a preventative one. Using the multi-step CP process discussed in the previous section as a model, the CP team can create the IR plan. The Planning Committee will draft a set of function-specific procedures. For procedures to enact after the incident, separate functional areas may develop different procedures. Procedures for before the incident are performed in advance, such as a data backup, preparation for disaster recovery, training, testing, service agreement copies, and a business continuity plan. Shown here, there are going to be 3 separate incident response planning documents: before the attack, after the attack, and during the attack. The IR planning team seeks to develop predefined responses, as we just discussed, that guide users through the steps needed to respond to an incident. In some organizations, the CSIRT may simply be a loose or informal association of IT and InfoSec staffers who would be called up if an attack was detected on the organization's information assets. Incident response actions can be organized into three basic phases: detection, reaction, and recovery. Displayed is an IR checklist showing detection analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery, and post-incident activity. Data protection and preparation for incidents include traditional data backups, whether it be on tape or on an external hard drive, electronic vaulting, which is bulk batch transfers of data to an off-site facility, remote journaling, and database shadowing. Initial reports from end users, intrusion detection systems, and host and network-based virus detection software and system administrators are all ways to track and detect incident candidates. Careful training allows everyone to relay vital information to the IR team. Incident indicators can include unfamiliar files and programs just starting to run without your knowledge, or an unusual system crash. It could also be the slow operation of your computer, which could be another indicator that something's going on. Presence of new accounts or reported attacks by your users saying there's something going on. Also, changes to the logs, or even just a hacker notifying you that you've been hacked. An occurrence of actual incidents is when you have the actual loss of availability, integrity, confidentiality, or that there's been a violation of policy or of law. A key is not only detecting the incident, but reacting to it. Once the actual incident has been confirmed and properly classified, the IR plan moves from the detection phase to that reaction phase. When notifying key personnel, note that other key personnel in the organization must be notified of the incident only after it has been confirmed, but before media or other external sources would learn of it. Documenting an incident is critical. It can prove the organization did everything possible to deter the spread of the incident and protect the information it holds. Incident containment strategies. It focuses on two tasks: stopping the incident and recovering control of the systems. In incident containment strategies, stopping all computers and network devices may be a last resort, but it's always a possibility. Incident escalation. Each organization will have to determine during the business impact analysis the point at which the incident becomes a disaster. Those who document the damage of the incident must be trained to collect and preserve evidence in case the incident is part of a crime or results in a civil action. Note, when recovering from incidents, the process includes identifying the vulnerabilities that allowed the incident to occur. Otherwise, you can't employ a control to prevent it in the future. It has to address the safeguards that failed so they can be repaired or upgraded. It has to evaluate the monitoring capabilities, if they're present, to improve detection and reporting methods. In recovering from the incident, you also have to be able to restore the data from the backups and restore services. Continue continuously monitoring the system, and now you have to work to restore confidence in the members of the organization's communities of interest. Common mistakes CSIRTs make. This is according to McAfee. There's 10 common mistakes that an organization's CSIRTs make in IR, and these are all failure twos. Key is failure to establish a central operations center. Failure to know your enemy. Remember those in chapter 1 and 6 of the text. Or secure monitoring networks and network devices. NIST recommendations for incident handling. They include acquiring tools and resources, preventing incidents from occurring, identifying precursors and indicators, establishing mechanisms for outside parties to report incidents, requiring a baseline level of logging, profile networks and systems, understand normal behaviors of your network systems and applications, a log retention policy, and an event correlation. The NIST recommendations also include maintaining and using a knowledge base of information, safeguarding the incident data, and holding lesson learned meetings after there is a major incident. An investigation that takes the protect and forget approach focuses on the detection and analysis of events to determine how they happened and to prevent reoccurrence. Disaster recovery. The key role of a disaster recovery plan, or DR plan, is defining how to reestablish operations at the location where the organization is usually located, the primary site. The DRPT in turn organizes and prepares the DR response teams to actually implement the DR plan in the event of a disaster. Disaster recovery response teams can be broken into disaster recovery management, communications, vendor contact, data management, and the others shown here. The NIST methodology can be adapted for DRP as well. You can organize the team, develop the policy statement, review the BIA, identify preventative controls, create strategies, develop a plan document, and then test, train, exercise, and perform maintenance on the plan. Remember, it's a living document too. The DR policy itself may have been created by the organization's CP team, but it could also be done by the DR team. In either case, the DR policy contains the following key elements: a purpose, scope, roles and responsibility, resource requirements, training requirements, exercise and testing schedules, plan, maintenance schedule, and special considerations. Disaster classifications. Though disasters can be classified in a number of ways, here are a few: natural disasters, man-made disasters, and by speed of development, rapid onset or slow onset. Natural disasters include fire, flooding, earthquakes, lightning, landslides or mudslides, tornadoes and severe windstorms, hurricanes, typhoons, tsunamis, electrostatic discharge, dust contamination. When generating the disaster recovery scenario, start with the most important asset: people. The simple DR plan elements are shown here. They include the name of the agency, when we last tested the DR plan, who should be called, location of emergency equipment and supplies, and follow-up assessments. Let's talk about business continuity. Business continuity planning, or BCP, ensures critical business functions can continue in a disaster and is most likely managed by the CEO or COO of the organization. The NIST methodology can be adapted to business continuity as well. Form the team, develop the policy statement, review the BIA, identify preventative controls, create strategies, develop the plan, test it, train, exercise, and maintenance of the BC plan, because it also is a living document. Business continuity policy has the following areas: the purpose, the scope, roles and responsibilities, resource requirements, training requirements, exercise and testing schedules, as well as planned maintenance schedules and special considerations. Continuity strategies. Several strategies for business continuity are available. The three exclusive use options are always hot sites, warm sites, and cold sites. Shared use is timeshare, service bureaus, and mutual agreements, where specialized options include a rolling mobile site or externally stored resources. Here you see an incident response and disaster recovery illustration. Here you see an organization having a disaster such as a fire and the disaster recovery and business continuity planning associated. The contingency planning and implementation timeline shown here shows as the attack occurs, post-attack in hours, and post-attack in days, providing the IRP, DRP, and BCP. Crisis management. While some organizations include crisis management as a subset of the DR plan, the protection of human life and the organization's image is such a high priority that it may deserve its own committee, policy, and plan. According to Gartner research, the crisis management team is responsible for managing the event from an enterprise perspective and performs the following roles: supporting personnel and their loved ones, keeping the public informed, and communicating with major customers, suppliers, partners, agencies, organizations, media, and other interested parties. The CMPT should include individuals from all functional areas of the organization in order to facilitate communications and cooperation. Business resumption. Such a comprehensive plan as the business resumption plan must be able to support the reestablishment of operations at two different locations, one immediately at an alternate site and one eventually back at the primary site. Here's a contingency plan template. Note 3.4 contingency phases, broken down to response, resumption, recovery, and restoration. In 5.2 of the contingency plan template, note the teams that have been created. In the last portion of the template, note the appendixes. They include contingency plan contact information, a team staffing and tasking, documentation list, inventories, contact lists, requirements, and agreements. Testing the contingency plan. When writing a plan, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to rewrite it. This is why exercising your contingency plan is important. In an emergency, you need to be able to execute this plan without having to overthink or find new information. It may not be available. This is why constant evaluation and improvement will lead to an improved outcome. Managing investigation in the organization. In order to protect the organization and possibly assist law enforcement in conducting an investigation, the investigator, CISO, InfoSec manager, or other appointed individual must act to document what happened and how. Digital forensics, like traditional forensics, follows a clear, well-defined methodology, but it tends to be as much art as it is science. An item does not become evidence until it is formally admitted to evidence by a judge or other ruling official. Note there are two key purposes for digital forensics: to investigate allegations of digital malfeasance and to perform root cause analysis. In the corporate environment, the names, affidavits, and search warrants may change, and in many cases may be verbal in nature, but the process should be the same. Digital forensics methodology. Note that in digital forensics, all investigations follow the same basic methodology. Here you see the digital forensics process. Organizations should develop specific digital forensics procedures, along with guidance on the use of these procedures. Law enforcement involvement has advantages and disadvantages. While they're much better equipped at processing the evidence, Involvement can result in the loss of control of the chain of events following the incident. In summary, planning for an unexpected event is usually the responsibility of managers from both information technology and information security communities of interest. Contingency planning is the process by which information technology and information security communities of interest position their organizations to prepare, detect, react, and recover from incidents. Remember the 4 teams of individuals involved in contingency planning: CP team, IR team, DR team, and BC team. Remember there's 3 categories of incident indicators: possible, probable, and definite. Remember the DR plan must include crisis management, the action steps taken during and after the disaster. Remember, all plans must be tested to identify vulnerabilities, faults, and inefficient processes. And that these plans must be living documents, be able to grow and change as you discover discrepancies or better ways to prevent the incidents. Most organizations cannot sustain a permanent digital forensics team, but there should be people in the organization, primarily in the InfoSec group, ready to step forward and understand and manage that forensic process. Thank you for listening to this presentation. Please go forward now to complete your discussion forum posts and your requirements for the week using this information and that you got in the textbook. Thank you.